So welcome again. So today we've got a really amazing person who's going to be having conversation with me. I'm really excited. And Tracy Abayata, I've already posted like her bio, and so you guys know a little bit about her. She's a HR professional. She's currently working as a VP at Lazard in their learning and development and diversity and inclusion space. But doing a bunch of things. Tracy has had experience working in financial services, working in the third sector with a charity that's just made so much impact, and a charity that made so much impact in my career, because that's actually how I started my career, through SEO London, and Tracy spent a lot of time there, and now she's back into the private sector, but just doing really amazing things. Every time I think about Tracy, I always just think about someone who's just warm and super open, and I always know like she's connected, she knows people, and she's just the quintessential problem solver. So that's always like, you know, and that's something that I strive to be. Whenever someone asks me a question, I'm like, oh, I know this person, but literally that's who Tracy is. Every time I say I have a problem, she's like, oh, I'm going to connect you with that person and this person. And by the time I leave, I'm actually overwhelmed with like solutions. It's actually quite, you know, but I'm really, really excited to have her. So welcome, Tracy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amazing. So we're going to kick off a little bit of an agenda for you guys today. So we've done the welcomes and some housekeeping. You know a little bit about Tracy now. So we're just going to kick off straight into the conversation on this crisis thing and why it matters, and why I thought it would be good to kind of have this conversation. And then we'll have some time for Q&A, as well as I said, stay tuned for the giveaway at the end. Definitely do not lose the opportunity to get that. Trust me, it's a good one. So Tracy, first question. This is the second crisis of both our careers. We both started our careers sort of in around 2007, 2008. So it's a whole different experience now. We're definitely more junior then, and then now both of us sitting within, mid senior roles within our organizations. So like, firstly, like, what is this thing of like, when we talk about crisis, like, what is crisis?
Yeah, so I guess I did my internship in 2007. So I started my career in banking. And 2008, I remember it was my training week where, we had our, training. It was the US investment bank, global analysts from around the globe. And I think it was, maybe day 2 or day 3 that Lehman Brothers collapsed.
Oh, wow.
And we, people just didn't know what was happening. I know that Citi was on the brink of going as well. So it was really unprecedented times. And it was such a contrast, because I remember like the year before when we did our internship, SEO London, I also started my career through them. They used to give us, talks at different investment banks. And I remember somebody said, this was at the beginning of the summer 2007, this is the best time to get into the industry. It's never been so great. It's amazing. And things unraveled after the summer of 2007, and we were like, okay, what just happened? Came the following year, and that's when banks actually started collapsing left, right, and centre. So just to that point, I think when we talk about crisis, the reason why it's a crisis is because actually nobody knows what is going on. Like, nobody knows what to do. And that is why there's a crisis. There's a crisis in leadership. Everybody's grappling. Everybody's trying to make sense of what is happening. And I think that's exactly what was happening in 2008, and, caused as a result of a financial crisis. And now we're in a health crisis, and we're in a state where actually people don't know what the future is going to hold. And I think when we talk about crisis, then what it means is that actually for those people that are the underdog, but actually know that they have solutions to bring to the table, you're more likely to thrive in crisis than you would in normal times, where people would probably work on their own people, or, kind of position themselves for the things. But if nobody knows what's happening and you have that solution, then actually crisis can definitely work to your advantage.
Right. So when you think about where you are now, as you think about this crisis versus the last one, in terms of like how potentially you've grown, how is that different for you? Like, how is it working in your mind? Like,
yeah, so I think I had just started my career, and I was thinking, am I going to have a job within the next month? And people were, we saw people being made redundant, so I think back then there was a lot of fear. My focus was more on, what can I do to not lose my job? Whereas I think now, kind of given the experience that I've had in industry and just knowing that actually crisis does pass, so being able to look through. So I think sometimes in a crisis, it's so easy to, just focus on everything that's going on that you're almost paralyzed. So I think now my mindset is more, how can I be relevant actually, rather than like, am I going to lose my job? Like, how can I be relevant in this time when, everything is a bit crazy?
In terms of the way we've talked about, we've exchanged notes around, how we're coping, how we're dealing, what we're doing, what we're seeing at work and the like. And so I wanted to kind of use the opportunity to summarize some of the conversations that we've had around dealing with crisis, and obviously to help people have really strong takeaways as they go from this conversation. I kind of grouped it into 5 key areas I want us to, spend time about. So there are 5 keys. But you can think about it really as 5 key areas of this conversation. So 5 keys to leveraging crisis for your career growth. So one of the first things, of course, is, the fearful message that comes out. Obviously you hear this news is really far away in China, and you just think of what's going on. Everyone's living their life, and then suddenly it starts becoming really real, really fast. Talk to me about positivity and the power of sort of like staying sane in this.
Yeah, I think this is really important. And I know that, actually the times that we're going in is very difficult, especially when, you've personally been affected by, whatever is happening. But I think, it's just important to kind of keep a positive mindset. And, so within all the chaos that's going on, there are positives that are coming out of it. And I think we have to try to position ourselves to see them. And, I'll give you an example. So for myself, I'm currently at a firm. I'm only doing a 12-month maternity cover. And, to be honest, it's probably not the greatest time to be doing a 12-month maternity cover when you're thinking about what you're going to do next.
And you just started too. You started in September, right?
Yes, I started in September. And like I said, I think it's very easy to start thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to be made redundant? Are they going to need me? But I think my mindset has shifted to actually, how can I be relevant?
Yeah.
Like focus on what you can bring. And I also think focus on, what the good is around. So yes, we've all been forced to work from home, but actually that comes with positives. So, yeah. If it's, you have your family at home, like that in itself is a blessing. Or, if you are by yourself, or, whatever it is you're doing, there are things that this whole setup has allowed us to do that before we wouldn't have been able to do. Mm-hmm. The fact that people can jump on a webinar. I don't know if, people attended the Advancing Your Career virtual conference that happened for the last 3 days. It was fantastic. And, whenever would you get the opportunity to hear from people from Africa, from the US, from the UK, all in one place. And it's because of this whole environment that has allowed that to happen. So I think there is a lot of good happening. And actually, I think it's up to us to be able to see it. So it all really is about your perception and, what you choose to dwell on.
And as I said, one thing you mentioned is this crisis is different from the last couple of, financial crises. This is a health crisis. So this is personal, right, to people. So what would you say, are your tips for kind of staying positive, especially for those maybe who have, I know we're here, we're talking about our careers are leveling up, but for a lot of people, this is real. This is life. They've lost people, life for them has changed, and we empathize, with that. But what are some of do you have any tips to share on how people can maintain positivity when they've been personally impacted in this time?
So I think, I guess kind of, I've had friends who were not well and, kind of got to hospital stage, but, by the grace of God, they came out, and that's fine. So I haven't been impacted when it comes to people passing away. So, I think when it comes to grief, actually I was listening to, a friend of mine was doing a session on grief, and it is very painful. And I think it's one of those things that unless you've been there, it's, you can't really say that, just do this or do that. And I think, for those people that have gone through difficult times, I think, it's, yes, grieve if you have to, but I think as well, just being grateful for life. So, in this whole coronavirus thing as well, I saw there was this post of this 93-year-old man, and I think he had recovered from coronavirus and in Italy, and they said, oh, we're going to have to charge you 500 euros a day for the ventilator that he used, and he like started crying. And they were like, oh, you know, is it because of the 500 euros? He was like, no, I'm crying because actually for the last 93 years, I've had God's breath in my lungs. So how much do I owe God? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So these are the things that we take for granted, like the fact that we can actually get up. And I think for those people that have probably been impacted by the virus and maybe recovered, I'm sure you probably appreciate life that much more. Like the fact that, you know, you can move, you can get up, you can think, you can, you know, and so it's almost as if when the things that are dear to us are taken away, that's the only time we can appreciate them. So, you know, so even coming out of this, like I really believe that people are actually going to really appreciate being able to hug each other. Like you see your friend and being able to, you know, hug your friend that you haven't seen in 2 months. Whereas now, you know, if I go to my parents' house, it's like, hi, mommy, hi, daddy. But you know what I mean? And this is the world that we live in. So I think it's really important for us to appreciate what we have now. And even the whole time of working from home full time, this is like a once in a generation thing. Like it's probably not going to happen again. So even just enjoying and embracing that. So I really think that, you know, those people that are always looking for the good, they will see the good. And that's even just, that's just even helpful for your mental health, you know, being able to stay positive, like, okay, yes, there's a lot of bad things going on, but what is good? And actually sitting down to document that, I think can just kind of help put things into perspective.
Yeah. And I think just in the sense of like work, you know, putting this into like the work context, like staying positive for me has always meant like, just think about it as this, like you go to like the dentist, you go to the dentist chair and then the guy, he holds like the man or woman holds the utensils and then he starts shaking and he just seems fearful and afraid, like you just get up and leave. And I think sometimes, you know, when you picture it that way, you realize like there's that sense of in, you know, in your career in terms of portraying confidence, like just being someone who is calm, even in the sight of everything else that's going on is really, really key. And you know, the voice of leadership is always generally positive. You would literally see, they know that they're breaking it, but they're pushing through by just trying to keep everybody calm. They're trying to say, you know, this too will pass. They're trying to use all these words about their people and what their priorities are. And I think we can all learn from that and imbibe that and just have that sense of calmness. You know, this is, and you talked about it at the start, you know, like what makes this a crisis? Like nobody knows what's going on. This is uncharted waters. You can't ask anyone a question because nobody really knows anything.
No, there's no precedent, like, because, you know, people, there's no vaccination, like nobody knows what's happening. So if you can be that person that can be like, you know what, no, let's just, you know, you're the person that's smiling on the video call, or, you know, you're the person that's saying, okay, this is the problem, but, you know, let's see what we can do. Like just even being willing to be able to explore, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, I think that's really good. So there are lots of different things that we can do there in terms of portraying positivity in the workplace. So even little things like organizing Zoom drinks, being that person that has that is trying to do that and keep morale within the team, it's good and it will always be recognized. So doing stuff like that is always good. Definitely stay away from like the fear mongering and, you know, the chitter chatter. There's always a lot of stuff. But yeah, I think just in terms of creating that positive atmosphere, having that sense of, you know, having the words of positivity, I think is really helpful, like in your team, in your business, and, you know, in whatever that you're doing. So great. So then you know, we've talked a lot around providing solutions in this time. Like this is one of those things that nobody knows what's going on, but the person who knows what to do is the person who's going to win, right? So like, how have you been able to, you know, be solution oriented, you know, whether it's SARD or with stuff with Opportunity Central?
Yeah, so I think, you know, when coronavirus hit, I think what it did, it rocked a lot of people's plans. So for instance, with Opportunity Central, one of the things that, you know, I was developing was some of the training programs to deliver, you know, with, you know, pitching to clients to say that, you know, you may wish to send your, you know, your people in your team on my training programs. And that would have been in person. So that got cut because nobody's wanting to host anything at the moment. So I started thinking, okay, so what can I do? And the first thing, like, and to be honest, it took me a while to actually pivot. Like, I think it took me probably a good 3-4 weeks where I was literally just overwhelmed. I've got 3 children. So even just the homeschool, the school WhatsApp groups in itself was enough to just, you know, shut you down for a week, just thinking, you know, what am I going to do with these kids? And there was so much out there, so much information, but I just found it was so overwhelming. And then I had to think about Opportunity Central work. And I think after I kind of just got into the flow of things, one of the things that I started thinking was, okay, who are my key stakeholders? So when I look at Opportunity Central, you know, I want to, you know, offer consultancy services to these organizations. So they are my stakeholders. I also do a lot of stuff with students. They are my stakeholders. So it's about looking at your stakeholders now and forgetting about what you had planned to do, but what are their needs now? Like, what do they need right now? And then being able to say, okay, how can I provide that? So one of the ways that, you know, I realized is that, you know, a lot of firms that are working with, like, you know, junior level talent, you know, they're all scared about how are we going to deliver a virtual internship program. You know, talent is important to us, but this coronavirus means that we cannot meet in person. So what does that mean for us? So I knew that that's a question that everybody's going to be thinking about. Then you have students who, for some, you know, some of their programs have been cancelled. So they're thinking, you know, about their future. People, they don't have exams to do. So for me, it was important to remember that, no, I need to make sure that I'm putting opportunities in front of them so that they can still know what they're doing in this season. And then in the same way, when it comes to the clients, you know, for me, I love writing. So writing pieces, thought pieces that are going to help them navigate in this season. So it's not anything that, you know, but what it does do is that you build your brand as, okay, you have a solution and you can deliver, you know, you have a solution that you're putting out there. And it's helped me go back to my team and be able to provide something. So I think it's really important that, you know, in your organization, think about who are your key stakeholders and what are their biggest problems now. And based on what you do, is there anything you can do to alleviate some of the, or, you know, respond to some of those needs? But I can always be looking for the solution, not being afraid to go against the grain. Everyone says, oh, this thing, it can't happen, what's going to happen? But you be like, okay, let's take a step back and let's figure out what we can do. We know the constraints, what can be done within those constraints.
And I want to pick up on something that you mentioned around, like, you know, who are your key stakeholders? A lot of times when we think about clients, we're always thinking about our external clients. So even like within like the space that I work in, we have this thing where we say client facing and non-client facing. And I actually generally think that that's quite wrong, because even though you may not be seeing external clients, so like clients of the firm, you have internal clients. So you as a particular division, you have people that you serve, and those are your clients, right? So you don't always have to be dealing with that external person. You might be someone who is sitting internally, and we call it the federation at Goldman, where you're basically you're inside. So as a risk manager, my role is a bit weird, but as a risk manager, I do have external clients, but a lot of the time I have internal clients, because I'm working with the business who are trying to execute their stuff. I'm working with legal to do this. I'm working with operations to do that, and I have to be able to deliver to, you know, for them. And so a lot of the time, a lot of things that I do, and in my role is really, how can I be a better advisor to people? Because like I say, nobody knows anything. So everyone's just trying to exchange notes. And so being a better advisor to say, you know, I know you're covering this client and this is what's happening on your side, but I cover a similar client elsewhere, and I can give you some insight that they probably have shared with me around how their business is coping with this, and maybe that will help you in terms of what we're doing and delivering outside. So I think I'll just say, like, broaden your perspective about who are your clients. You know, like your client could literally be the person inside. It's pretty much anybody who is receiving value from you is your client.
Anybody you interact with.
But then what are your tips in terms of finding, so we talk about being solution oriented, but how can you actually be be creative? How can you create those solutions? How can you help in that process?
And I don't even think that you have to recreate the wheel. So again, like, I think, you know, it's very easy in a crisis to become very inward looking. So just thinking about, okay, what's happening directly, but actually, because nobody really knows what's going on, what you're finding is that actually, probably as an industry, people are more willing to come together. So, you know, we're always being invited to webinars. And actually, I think, you know, for some people, it's probably the same sentiment as being invited to another WhatsApp group. It's like, oh, another one of these things.
Yeah.
But actually, they're really like, obviously manage your day job, but do attend these webinars. Like, do reach out to people that are doing exactly the same thing you are doing in another firm, because they will also be doing a lot of, you know, solution finding, and just being able to brainstorm with them, you know, outside of your team, to be like, okay, you know, what are you guys doing like with this problem they will be having? And just by them sharing that information with you, you now become a person that can actually go back to your team and say that, you know, this is what we could consider. I know that XYZ on the street is doing this. And as soon as your firm knows a competitor is doing it, they'll be thinking, oh, why are we not doing this?
Yeah.
So it's really important to talk and actually build very strong networks with people across the industry. And I'll give you an example. So I work in HR. You know, COVID struck around just before Easter time. And, you know, we have spring weeks. So, you know, there was rumors that, you know, banks have been going to be pulling on their spring weeks because of coronavirus. And the first thing I did was go onto LinkedIn. And because I worked at SEO London before, I have, you know, people that I used to work with at banks that, you know, previously. So I actually reached out to one of my contacts at Yes, actually, and asked, you know, we are, you know, looking at coronavirus, just wanted to find out, what are you guys thinking about Spring Insight? And she was like, oh, it's funny you reached out to me, actually, because tomorrow there's an interbank call. And I was like, okay, who's organising this interbank call? Can I go? She was like, I don't know, it's my boss that's on. So I was like, okay, can you find out if you get details? Like, sure. She said, she messaged me back, oh, I can't get through to my boss. She hasn't responded to me, but I know that it's somebody in this firm. So I went onto LinkedIn and I just searched head of whatever, and I messaged her directly, like, I heard there's an interbank call, can I get on it? And just by me being proactive in that, I got my team onto that call. Wow. So every single week, we are in a core team of banks that meet, and we're actively discussing what are we going to do about our summer internship. And that makes my boss look good, because now she has all the intel she needs when she's the head person in the US or whatever. But it's like, had we just sat there, we would have been trying to figure it out on ourselves as a small independent bank. But all I did was take the initiative to go on LinkedIn to talk to you know, message somebody that I knew at SEO London to say, hey, what are you guys doing? She said, oh, I don't know, but because I asked, there's this call happening tomorrow. And then I had the boldness to say, can I get on that call? And she said, oh, well, I don't know the person, but, and then it could have stopped there. She didn't have the information. So I said, okay, that's it. And a lot of the times we stop at the first hurdle. I said, that's fine. Thank you for that piece of information. Now I can move on and I can go directly to the source. And for since Easter, we've been on this call weekly, and it's now helping us to think about how we're looking at our summer internship program, our analyst training program. Problems are coming up that we didn't even foresee, but that they're foreseeing, and then we can now go back in-house and be like, hey, what about this? So it looks like we're on the ball, but all we're doing is collaborating with other people. So it's really important to reach out. And if you don't find what you're looking for from your first contact, do a bit of digging, and I'm sure, you know, you'll get to where you're trying to get to.
Amazing, amazing. And I know we've touched a little bit around like the third point around being strategic and forward thinking. And this is like a really big one for me, is the sense that whilst now we're doing so many things that we're basically firefighting, because we're in unprecedented times, a lot of what is happening right now is happening like outside of the realm of possibility. Like, this is like that stress case that people thought would never happen, and it's actually happening now. We're living this stuff right now. But it's also, you could then get very distracted by just focusing on how do we firefight, problem solve, and, you know, all of that. And so I'm always a big believer in terms of like leveraging times like this for your career, about being more forward thinking as well. So whilst you're trying to solve for today, you should always be keeping an eye out for going forward. So yeah. How have you been able to really think about, you know, especially like you're doing a maternity cover as well. So how have you been able to think about, like, you know, the next year, not even talk of the next 4 or 5 years in your career?
Yes, I think when it comes to, you know, kind of being strategic and forward thinking, I think it's really important to ask questions, like just asking yourself, like, what does this mean? Like, you know, or if, you know, where we've gotten to now, it's forced a lot of things to happen. And I think taking a step back to ask, okay, so what's happened? What could be here to stay? and what has to go. So I think always asking yourself questions is very important. And, you know, I put a post up on LinkedIn the other day, and actually the thought came to me whilst I was running, like, you know, what are the 3 things that, you know, coronavirus has taught the business world? You know, and these are things that actually we need to think about because, and as an HR professional, I think it's really important because it's all about people, right? So one of the things that I wrote was, you know, working from home. It's taught people, like for all the skeptics that said that it's impossible to work from home, coronavirus has forced people to see that you can work from home.
Possible, right?
Not only can you work from home, you can work and teach from home. Do you know what I mean? Like all the things that we said that you couldn't do, and you can work, yes, you're doing it around your schedule, but the work is still getting done. So actually, what does that mean for the latent talent, which for, you know, years and years have actually said that they're opting out of the labour market because it's just not possible to be a mum and be in the workplace? Coronavirus is going to change that.
Yes.
So you may get now more women that before very capable, very competent, and would love to work if they can do it around their children and will do it well. Probably firms will be like, actually, maybe we can consider them now because we realise it works. So these are things that, you know, we need to think about, and in everybody's own sphere of influence, it will be different, but without taking the time to think about, okay, how has this impacted what I do? What's going to stay and what's going to have to go from the old world, or what's, you know, what does the new world look like? I think, you know, and even having that, and you know, one of the things, it might even just be have those brainstorming sessions with people in your field, like sit down and just see, okay, what do you guys think the future is going to be like? And then not only that, you know, so assimilate what that means for you. Where should you be investing your time? What should you be learning how to do based on, you know, your perception of what is going to happen? And I really think that there is, you know, there is such thing as a first mover advantage. And I was thinking of this, I think I was talking to my husband yesterday, and he was saying, you know, Joe Wicks, do you know how much he makes every week? And he was like 100,000K, like he's donating it to the NHS. And I was like, that guy is so smart. As soon as
it was like he was ready for it. It's crazy.
And everybody started sending in WhatsApp groups all these homeschooling methods. This guy said, I'm going to become the PE's nation. I'm going to become the nation's PE teacher. Just decided. And then literally one, you know, just put it on some WhatsApp, put it on Instagram, went viral. So now he's like the global PE teacher. If I came and said, I'm doing a Tracy Abiata, PE with Tracy Abiata, because he's already cornered the globe. Do you know what I mean? So it's really important. And this is where, you know, the importance of being able to pivot, position yourself, and then once you position yourself, performing. So, but I think for a lot of the times, and this is where
what you say, so pivot, position yourself,
and then perform.
Okay.
So
you like
that got the memo that look, school's out. He was like, right, I'm being a PE teacher. Then he positioned himself. He put his YouTube stuff together, sent it out, WhatsApp groups. First they had however many people join. And then now that he's doing it well. He's adding fancy dress. He's doing all these things. So, you know, it's really about like, you know, and sometimes it's almost as if the things you want to do, it seems so big, but in crisis, people will give you the opportunity if it's solving a solution. His stakeholders, he decided to look at the stakeholders of parents, thinking how they're going to do it. They definitely need that half an hour to entertain their kids somehow. Like, just take them away. Like, let me help that be a half an hour in their diary, Monday to Friday done. You know, so it's all about understanding which stakeholders are you trying to support, and then having the courage and the boldness to actually be like, yeah, like I've pivoted, I've positioned myself. Now I can actually deliver on, you know, satisfying your needs of my key stakeholders.
Yeah. So pivot, position, perform. So if you guys like that, virtual claps for Tracy, please. Thank you very much. Yeah. And then one of the things that I was thinking about when it comes to, you know, strategy and stuff is like sometimes you know these things peripherally, but like actually actioning them can be quite tough. But I always say to people, like, one practical tip is actually listen. Sometimes when we're at work and we're at meetings, we kind of tune off our sound, and we kind of focus on the only thing that we want to focus on and not all the other stuff that's happening. And it's amazing how much you can learn about what is giving people angst in the workplace, just if you chose to listen. Don't just only listen when you're being spoken to, but actually like listen consistently, because people always talk about their problems. Like more than anything else, people talk about the things that are annoying them. And so the more you listen and you can identify problems, the more you can then be creative about providing solutions and figuring out, so things like those town halls that they're setting up at work, definitely attend. You would hear stuff. You would hear things about someone talking about how we're coming up with a strategy on how we should engage our interns for this summer. We're coming up with a strategy on how to do X, Y, and Z. You can find those really key points and jump in. And that you can then send that email, say, oh, I was on that, I was on that town hall that you just did, and I heard you speak about this, that, and the other. I would love to be involved with that project. And that's how you can kind of create that space for yourself, right?
Yeah. And I think as well, like in this time, because like we said, crisis, nobody knows what's happening. Like it's never happened before. Like don't underestimate the transferable skills that you've acquired that can help you in this season. So when, there was talk about cancelling spring weeks, spring programs, I remember I sat in a meeting room with my boss and another member of the team. And I was like, we're not going to cancel, like we can do this. And they were like looking at me like, are you crazy, girl? I was like, we can do this. And my mind went to the female leadership development program that I did in SEO London. I was like, actually, 80% was done. I was like, this is exactly the same thing. Like, and I was so confident. And I think they were like, okay, so how's this going to happen? I was like, don't worry, this is what we do. We just went step by step. I remember sitting in front of the business and being like, so this is what we need you to do. And they're like, okay, so are we going to do this? I was like, yeah. No, and just explaining to them and like walking them through. And by the time we finished the spring program, literally like the feedback was amazing. We were getting messages from, to our CEO, from our clients being like, kudos to you guys for putting on such a fantastic program, like people were ranting and raving, and I was like, yeah, but it was just like her capital. And I think just having that confidence and that courage, like I could have easily said, oh yeah, let's just cancel because everybody else had cancelled. And I was like, if we say that we are, an independent boutique investment bank, let's show the benefits of being nimble, like, and we can do it and do it well. And it was so well received. So I think don't be afraid, especially if you know that you can, like, to use your past experiences. And like you said, Mary, like, using language that will resonate with them. Like I was at the town hall and I know that this would really align with the vision of the firm, like, or, what we're trying to do. We're trying to, still stay true and show that we are invested in, the next generation of talent. So, I think actually the work that I've done outside with my, my church group, or what I've done this will actually be really beneficial here, and not being afraid to sell those transferable skills, because now everybody's looking for a solution. So if you're willing and you're bold enough to put that forward, they will listen.
Doing all of this stuff, it does take work. It is going to increase your workload, but the results, at the end of it, phenomenal. So definitely do that. So yeah, so moving on to the next point, I'm conscious about time, because I want to make sure that we are bang on, is this thing about visibility, right? Visibility. Our watchword on visibility, just in case you didn't, no pun intended. But yeah, we love it. And yeah, so like, how do we be intentional about this thing called visibility? So after all this good work that you do,
I'm going to be really quick, Mary, just so that we can get some questions in. So when it comes to visibility, I think I've actually, a lot of the points that I've said before, I think feeds into that. So, the fact that you are being able to think of solutions. And like I said, I really would encourage people to connect with your industry, like through the webinars, through everything that's going on, like just making sure that you're in the know. So be where the action is, because then you can then kind of take that back and add value to your team. So yeah, and then I guess kind of just, being visible is about, when you are getting that information in a meeting, being able to talk about it and say, yeah, like, and I think, always talking about it, oh, we know, like you've got intelligence that they don't necessarily have. So it's almost as if you become the go-to person. Yeah. And I think in an environment like this, things move so quickly, so much is going on. So even if you become an expert in a little area, like, something, if it's, maybe latest developments of what the government's doing, or even when it comes to, the whole, working from home or whatever it is. And I think, it will vary depending on what division or, you know, where you sit, what industry you sit in, but being up to date, I think, is really good. And I guess, you know, some people have been furloughed, so maybe you're not working, but that doesn't mean you can't be visible. So again, I think LinkedIn is a great way to, you know, become visible, you know, start writing about the things you care about, start writing about the impact of your industry, you know, just add value where you can, I think is really, really important, and being intentional about that. And I think when you take a step back and you're thinking about, okay, so who are my stakeholders? What are their needs today? What can I do to satisfy them? I think that kind of sets you up on the right path to being able to being a person of value, and because of that you will be visible.
Yeah, and let's always remember that you do not get rewarded for work that you do, but you get rewarded for good work that you do that people know about and actually think is valuable. So it's not enough to just do a bunch of stuff. You have to find ways to weave it into your conversation. People know, master that elevator pitch. One thing I always do when it comes to like talking about the work that I do, I always make it about someone else. So maybe in team meetings, I would say, I really want to say a big thank you to Sophia, who's really helping us on this really big project that we're working on. So I'm kind of tooting my own horn, but I'm also like thanking her for her good work, and all of that is great, because what it's showing is, first of all, it's showing like I have operational capacity, but it also means that I have leadership capacity because I'm elevating like someone in my team. So you can always, they're always like really key like tips that you can use there around talking about the work that you do. But to be honest, just talk about the work that you do. Like you don't even have to find a loop, just do it.
And you can, sorry Mary, just to cut you, and there are different ways to do that. So I think, you know, don't, in the same way, like, you know, if you're leading people, you know, being able to elevate them, but then if you're working, you know, you have a boss, don't be afraid to make your boss look good. And there are ways that you can talk about your work. So if you have mentors in the organization that are not in your team, you can let them know, oh, this is what I've done, this is what I've contributed. Or, you know, if you get the opportunity to talk to, you know, people within the organization. So, you know, one of the things that I really leverage on is my experience in the whole D&I space. So letting people know that, you know, this is what I've done before, you know, and I'm here and I can really help you. So I think, you know, try to find ways to add value beyond just your team. And I think, you know, that will also give you, I think, access beyond your boss as well, because there may be things that they're just not, it's just not their domain. So they wouldn't necessarily go through them to get to you, and will come directly to you. And that's what I found at Lazard. So yes, I have a boss, but actually there are some projects I'm working on where actually, you know, I'm getting access to a really senior MD and the CEO, because that's just not within the remit that I'm working on. I'm working on this project. So it's really important as well, just to try to be, you know, kind of, again, think about where else can you get involved in. And, you know, and there's been a lot of talk about culture carriers. So people that are able to contribute to other areas, it will also help your visibility.
Yeah, amazing. And the final thing we want to talk about is around networks. And you've already shared so much about how you're leveraging your networks on LinkedIn and that kind of thing. But what are some of your key tips that people can use to really build sustainable and sticky networks when you're not in the same place? You're no longer able to, like, you know, physically interact with people.
Yeah, so anybody that knows me well, I love, like, for me, I do not joke with my relationships. My relationship capital, I tell people, is my biggest asset I hold. Like, you know, you remember people that helped you, like so be that person. Like that's in my view, be that person. And when you need something, you will always be able to get what you want. So it's really important to invest in your networks. And again, just going back to this whole stakeholder like mindset, like with the stakeholder in mind. Yes, budgets may have been frozen today because of coronavirus, but if you invest in your stakeholders, add value to them when there's no money on the table, when money comes back on the table, you will be the first person on the list.
Yeah.
So you really have to, do you know what I mean? Like, so if I'm saying that I want to do consultancy services, I will offer advice in this season to my stakeholders. I will be writing articles, showing firms, you know, somebody reached out to me on LinkedIn, we saw the work that you did with Lazard, can you give us advice? We're about to start our spring week next week. I said, you know what? I'm actually writing an article about it. I will send it to you. And if you want, we can have another chat on the phone. sent it to her, and then we organized a call and I walked her through it, because as far as I'm concerned, yes, we may be competitors, but actually I know my long-term view is to consult firms like the ones you work in. So let me at least add value. And what that does is she came back to say, thank you so much. You know, it went really well. It's great. So I'm investing with the hope that actually it might not be today, but in the future, I know that I can tap on your shoulder because I've invested in you. I've got goodwill with you. So it's really important. Like, always in my mind, I'm like, when people like roll their eyes at another WhatsApp group, I'm like, you have like, when people like WhatsApp group, I'm like, put me there. I want to be in the middle of that group. And then I also create a lot of groups, but it's because I love connecting people, because I'm like, I need to be in groups with people that I don't know, because then that then means that I have more. That's how your mindset should be. Like, and I think as well, like, so for me, even when I'm going on webinars, anybody that went to that Accelerate Your Conference career, it was fantastic. Every single speaker, I made sure that I connected with them and told them exactly the thing in their talk that interested me.
Right, that you could, exactly.
Yes, like, I need to, so you can actually acquire people into your network that are in line with where you're going. So a lot of the times, and I think particularly, you know, I'm not from a background that was, you know, set up, but everything that I've been able to achieve, like anything that I've wanted to do, I've been able to get through my network. I started Opportunity Central when I was on maternity leave, and I was working at SEO London, and I made a conscious effort not to approach any of the clients from SEO London. So all of those 20 whatever clients we worked with, they were off my list. But because of my relationship capital, I was able to pitch to at least 30 firms, because I would go on LinkedIn and I'll say, oh, this firm, I know we don't work with them. Oh, I worked with that person at SEO London, or they want a summer intern. They put me in touch with somebody. This person put me in touch with somebody. And it was all my networks that allowed me to be able to pitch to firms. And just being interested in people. So Opportunity Central, I think the first year we got 2 sponsors. And the sponsor that finally came on board with the sponsor, how I met the connection, I had a meeting with Dawid at his offices.
Yeah.
And he was sitting on a sofa. She was going into the meeting. And he was like, do you guys know each other? No. We connected. And then she was the one that brought me onto their firm. So it was just, that was just a sofa crossing. But because I came back with her, and I told her what I was doing, and she's like, it sounds really interested, followed up. They became a first sponsor. And I would have never have imagined, but it was just because I took an interest. So I would say to you, like, always welcome the opportunity to meet new people. And also just a visibility thing, when it comes to webinars, ask questions on those webinars. Like, introduce yourself on those webinars.
Your questions now, guys. We've literally got a few minutes. So first questions get answered.
Ask questions, and whilst I'm on the webinar, I'm looking them up on LinkedIn. I've typed my message ready to go. So as soon as the webinar's over, thank you so much for answering my question. It's fantastic, because either they're in the space that I want to operate, or they are connected to clients that I want to be consulting one day. So so now when I'm putting things on LinkedIn, they're now in my network, they're seeing all my work. So that again is visibility. So being quite strategic, and not just so that you can get something out of it. You know, sometimes, you know, you might not even think you have something to offer somebody, but I always tell people, just stop and think. Like, all it takes you is 5 seconds to think, even if you think that you might not have anything to offer. And I'll just give you a quick example of this. I remember one day I was in Morrison's, and I was like at the tailor place, like they do like the shoemaker area. And there was a lady, we just started talking, and she was like, oh, she really wants to get into seamstress, like tailoring. And I was like, I help people get into investment banking. I don't think I can help you. And all I did, I just stopped to think. I said, you know what? Let me just ask. I know this lady called Auntie Millie in Mitcham. Let me just ask her. I don't know what's going to happen, but I can ask her for you. All it was just me being willing to ask. So I asked, I took her number. I said, all it took of me was to drop a text to this Auntie Millie to say, oh, I met a lady. She's looking for, you know, to do some form of apprenticeship. Can you help? Send her my way. I think I met her. She texted me saying, thank you so much. She was able to get an apprenticeship with her. She's helped her so much. She's impacted. That woman will remember me for the rest of her life. I'm not going to remember her. You always remember people that help you. And I just need that person. So I'm really passionate about relationship capital. I'm really passionate about connecting people. Like Mary said, as soon as you tell me your problem, I'm like, let me see what I can do. I know somebody.
Definitely.
When it works out, the person I connect you to will remember me. And you will remember me. So now when I need something, and if you're that person, you're not afraid to ask people for help, because you know that when it's in your capacity, you too will help people. So I would say really, really invest in your network. I'm actually
great. So how do you ensure you remain visible on a virtual summer internship? Right up your alley.
That's a really good question. And so one of the things that I think it's really is that a particular firm that you're at? Is it like, what industry is this for? Okay, so asset management. Okay, so I think it's really, really important. So there are always some kind of key like things that interns get wrong. So in terms of like, it's always, oh, they could be better at doing this. So one is communication. Like you need to over communicate, and particularly in an environment where you don't get that face-to-face. So make sure that is one. Make sure that, you know, you're thinking about the bigger picture and you're always trying to see where you can add value. So I think when it comes to being visible on a summer internship, and somebody actually wrote an article about this, actually. I saw it I'll try and dig it out and find it for you. If you send me a message on LinkedIn, I'll try and dig out the article for you. But ask questions as well. If you know anybody that was there last year, and if you don't, you do. All you have to do is type in BlackRock LinkedIn. You'll find people. Ask them, you know, what is the internship like? Some internships might not be letting you do real work, but if they are, just making sure that, you know, you're writing notes, because, you know, when you understand what the deliverables are when you're being asked, and then being able to make sure that you confirm it. So I think sometimes, you know, in person, they give you the instructions like, yeah, and then you go away, you've forgotten. Make sure you understand everything. People know that this is a tough environment, so don't suffer in silence. I think peer networking is crucial. Make sure that you are for one another, like you're helping each other. You know, like I said, this whole bank thing, all the banks are working together. We're competitors, but nobody knows what's going on. They're like, we don't want to sink. You're not sinking. We don't, you know, they're jumping onto everyone's boat. So just make sure that you are in the know. But I will really try and find that article for you. So drop me a message and I'll dig something up. And if not, I'll write one. And I'll send it.
Phenomenal. Let me see. I think we had a couple other questions.
So somebody on maternity leave.
Wow. Okay, guys, we may not take everything. So currently on maternity leave, any suggestions on how to stay visible during this period? Fantastic question.
Yeah. So if you're on maternity leave, honestly, if you're on maternity leave and you're not going back, you've got a full, good, nice time with your children. You should be it's a very good time to be on maternity leave. But what I would say is that, you know, because you can join things from the comfort of your own home, maybe like these Zoom things that are happening, like Zoom drinks or, you know, whatever, team catch-ups, maybe agreeing to, you know, join some of them whilst you're on maternity leave. And again, just catching up with people, I think also looking outward. So for me, when it came to my maternity leaves, I've had 3 of them. After every single maternity leave, it was like a turning point in my career, which I loved. So I think maternity leave, it gives you a break. You get to reassess what you want to do. So also use it as an opportunity to connect with people. And so if you're on maternity leave, all these webinars, you can be going to them and just, you know, familiarizing yourself with what's going on in the industry, what's happening. So yes, I think just, you know, enjoy your time off, but then, you know, just try to start putting your feelers out there and, you know, having conversations with people about what's going on.
Okay. Amazing. And connect with Toby, who's on this chat, who runs an amazing platform called My Bump Pay. And she talks a lot about, if you guys don't know My Bump Pay, go to Instagram and put @MyBumpPay or but I hope I don't get it wrong, my www.mybumpay.com
Put it in there, Toby.
or .co.uk. Toby will put stuff in the chat. My Bump Pay is all about pregnancy and work and motherhood and that whole process. There's so much information out there, guys. Like you literally, like there's just so much. So check her out on Instagram. There's a whole world of stuff. And she's doing these bump stories, you know, at this time where she's talking to women who have women and their careers and motherhood. So that's always a big topic. So definitely connect with her. She's a great resource around that. So we've got a question from Kemi on hiring freezes all around. What's the appropriate strategy for prospecting for new roles? Okay, that's great. Yeah, in this environment.
Yeah, so I don't know what your what your field is, but I think again, it's just, you have to think about, how can I be relevant? Like, ask yourself that question. And when you answer that question, like, yes, the environment may be tough, but something is more likely to come up when you're thinking about, okay, you know, what is it that I can be doing now? You know, and I think without talking to you, I probably, you know, it might be, you know, just trying to be connected to the right people. And I think don't underestimate people. So even yesterday, you know, I got a text from my cousin and he put it in a group that we're in saying that, look, I've got an apprenticeship and it's been cancelled. Can anybody help me? He's done the right thing, like just putting it out there, because now everybody else can now go and look in their network and find somebody. So I think it's really important to be vocal about what you want and what you're looking for. Yeah. So as soon as I stepped in,
you if you wanted to ask any follow-ups or be more specific.
Pardon?
I was just saying to Kemi that I've unmuted her if she wanted to ask any specific follow-up or anything.
But yeah, but
hi guys. Hi.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hey guys. I guess because of time, I'll try and connect with you, Tracy. I guess separately. But yeah, I work in finance, energy finance to be specific. I'm sure you're aware of everything that's going on in the industry. So yeah, no, this is great, and yeah, no, I look forward to your next session. I think maybe some of my questions will be answered in that session as well.
No problem. And I think yeah. So one of the things, like just being willing to talk to people in that space beyond who you know, and letting people know what your plans are and what you're looking for. So the research shows that actually you're more likely to get an opportunity through your acquaintances than your friends and family. So the more people you tell, the more likely that when something comes up, they will remember you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this.
It's really important. Communicate what you're looking for and tell people, you know, yeah. So from the day that I started at Lazard, I've been telling them I'm doing a 12-month maternity cover, so they know in the back of their mind that, oh, this is temporary. So if you like me, do you know what I mean? So just being vocal and letting people know, like having conversations outside of Lazard, oh, you know, I've got a 12-month maternity cover, so I'm looking for what next. And if I'm telling 10 people that, when they're getting information, they're feeding it back to me, that's going to increase the likelihood that I'm going to hear about things when the time comes.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you so much. This has been very insightful. Thanks, Shopper.
No problem. And I think one thing that people should keep in mind is that in terms of thinking about the opportunities around this time, whereas before you're thinking about your local opportunities, this whole situation has made it that you have a use case for you to basically be working for any company in any part of the world.
Yeah.
At this point.
Absolutely.
Because if we all function, where now most of us around the world are in our 8th to 10th week of working remotely and still being able to deliver. Keep your receipts. If you can keep your receipts of how you worked, how you were effective, how you were strategic, how you were operational, how you were basically all the things you delivered. At this point, we cannot be sending our CVs to like any part of the Himalayas to work.
Yeah.
So definitely.
And it's true. Like, I think it's taken away the geographical limitation. And, you know, so even when we were doing the spring program at Lazard, like I just literally, you know, you get like global memos and things. The US retail team sent a piece on the impact of COVID on our industry, like on the US industry. I said, this is good. This will be good content for our spring program. I just messaged the authors, do you want to be part of our spring program? And he was like, oh, I don't know if that's allowed. I was like, yeah, you asked. It's one firm. And then we had the US team like be part of that successful program. And that never would have happened had it been in person. And it made me realize that. So if I want to talk to Obama, he's sitting at home. I know we can get him. You know what I mean? Like, take all the limitations off. And like Mary said, maybe your job is not in the UK. It could be in Africa. It could be in South America. It could be anywhere because everybody's in lockdown, but you might have the skills that people are looking for. So really like take the limitations off. And LinkedIn, people are around there from the world. So just if you're putting yourself out there, you're adding value, you know, your next opportunity doesn't necessarily need to be, you know, might be a different time zone, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Amazing. Teniola started a new job in a new career field whilst on lockdown. How do I make myself visible whilst trying to learn as much as I can?
Yeah, so you just have to, I mean, I think you will be surprised. Like, I think that's the other thing that I mentioned about what coronavirus has taught the business world, the creativity and innovation that can happen when people are under pressure. So it probably is going to be difficult, but it's doable. Like, and I don't know what you've transitioned out of, but I think it's really important to focus on your transferable skills. So I went from banking to third sector. I had never done that before, but reading the job spec, I was like, I know I can do this, and I can do this very, very well. I didn't have the proof. When I read the job spec, I just knew I could. And I had never done it. And I was able to do it because actually I knew my skills. So you might have to work a bit harder, but I think, again, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So it's really important that you are communicating. Obviously, in a virtual environment, you don't have the benefit of people sitting next to you, but identify people that are generous with their time, and see how you can add value to them, but then also, that they can also help you kind of get up to speed.
Mm-hmm. Follow us on socials, on Vishability, on Instagram. That's where we're most active. So the one other thing that we've just really done, and that has filled my heart with so much joy, I've been meaning to do it, but this time has actually given me a little bit more headspace to do it, is we've set up a Vishability tribe group on Telegram. And so what that does is it brings your network to literally your phone. So it's not about, you don't have to be on social media, you don't have to be on LinkedIn, you don't have to be on, even though you technically have to be on all those things, but this really puts it right in your hands, where you have a readily accessible pool of women, amazing women who are just like you, but they're literally right at your fingertips to ask all those questions you want. And already, we only set it up over the weekend, and already people have connected to do with interview tips, with tips on, managing motherhood and maternity and return to work, and people have shared, and I literally have not done anything, even though I have all these plans, but I'm like, oh, they're actually just doing their own thing. So if you want to join our Telegram group, we'll make it happen. So please send an email to my team at team@vishability.com. We send a quick email and just say at the title, join Telegram group, as if you're not already on it, and we'll make sure we send you the link. We love, love, love to have you. And that's a great way to, again, stay connected with us. So thank you guys for spending your 1 hour with us. I'm looking forward to seeing your feedback. It's been amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you.